My name is Jean Kaluza, and I've been in the product space for several years now, probably back to 2010, at least in some capacity in that digital product space. We're going to be talking today about the intersection between marketing, data, and product because recently for me this has been a really interesting subject, something I've been thinking a lot about. So hopefully it's helpful for you. I did want to say I have been in the product space. I've been a developer. I've been in kind of the design space as well, and more and more focused on the data aspect. So between data and product, fairly confident. But when it comes to marketing, very new to it. You're going to probably see really the extent of my marketing experience here. So if I mess up anything there, just heads up, it's not really my specialty. Um, then again, if you are interested in anything product based or you have any questions, I've never done a virtual talk like this before, but I did want to keep a space open for you. You could head on over to my website called orangedrum.com. I'm going to be trying to keep that link there for you. So if you ever have anything, just head over there. Even just say, hey, that's cool. And let's get started. So as I said, I've been in kind of the space for a minute, worked with several startups and products and clients, and across the way, it seemed like no matter what I did on my end, as far as products, creating great features, and the users would really respond to them, and we'll meet our metrics. Products just seem to keep uh, either not missing their mark or not quite making it to the point that they maybe expected they would. Um, so all of these things, and this might be kind of a risky thing for somebody to do, but these are all actual products I worked with, and actually none of them have really hit the mark of where they wanted to be. And whether it was they lost funding, they didn't quite connect with users. They couldn't build that audience, and they couldn't grow into the companies that they were anticipating they would. And this had everything to do with, I even felt it on my product research side. So it was even hard for me to reach out and contact the people that interacted with these. So it really did affect me, and it really has made me think from a personal standpoint. What's missing? Like what am I doing? Is there something I can do or help facilitate, or start a conversation on? And then I found out about growth metrics, and I wanted to kind of share with you kind of the excitement I have around those. So it would help probably to talk about metrics the way I might have seen them even before I started getting into this, and that is, product has their metrics and marketing has their metrics, and we both really focus on data. I don't know about you, but I tend to get along with marketing folks really well because we kind of think about things the same way. We're trying to shoot for a goal. But the difference is marketing really kind of hones in on more of the client and the money behind them. So they want a good return on investment always. They really want to focus in on customer acquisition cost and getting that down. They want a return on advertising spend because obviously it does cost a lot, and they want to make sure they're making the right kind of ads. That customer lifetime value also really important to figure out, between acquisition and how much we're getting them in a lifetime. Is that worth our value? And then obviously the retention rate, very important. And you're really just more focused on those things. But for products, we're assuming marketing is taking care of all of those, right? And for our little box, we want to focus on a customer conversion rate. Sometimes that's marketing, or sometimes you team up with marketing to get there. But I feel like that's product 101, where you might be building a website and you want that that visitor or user to convert to some sort of either a subscription or a paying customer. But that's kind of a product 101 metric. Dwell time has to do with like how long they're staying on your site. as a product person who's designing the features, obviously you're really excited about knowing if they're engaging in the features that you're designing in the right way and in the way that you expect. A net promoter score, the NPS, it's always my personal favorite to kind of take a general temperature of how people are consuming your product and relating to it, and how many promoters you have is always a good percentage to know. And then obviously, if you're drilling more specifically into your product and you're releasing different features, you might want to assign like something even more specific to that feature, and you might get really granular on that depending on what that is. All this to say, you could kind of see that they're really siloed, and if we silo teams, it's worth mentioning that I think in a general sense we know that can't be always good. It's good to focus and give teams obviously different buckets to live in, but it might be worth our while to investigating this space between and that overlap and figuring out how we can leverage some of that. And the more and more I peered into that, the space between led me to wonder what those metrics could look like. And they're actually called growth metrics. And we can use those to figure out whether a product is set for growth and why or why not that might be. So that's what we're going to talk about. It was kind of a long intro, but hopefully you're following. Before we get too far, I think when people think about growth, the immediate knee-jerk reaction might be to, create that viral video to bring all these eyeballs and participants to your website or product. And I think that's a dangerous assumption because though you might be getting a lot of that viral attention, it's often like the least attainable thing or users that you could bring there, because just because there's eyeballs on your site, if you know anything about personas and that development and research there, they might not be the most retainable. They might not be the people most likely to be engaged in your product. Might not have anything to do with them being there. And I think there's a lot of people that think growth metrics and growth teams, they're immediately thinking of like these growth hackers that have this special ability to bring all these eyeballs and people to your site automatically. And I really actually think that's more detrimental than anything because, potentially, right? If you get enough people, you're going to be knocking on your bandwidth limits door. Your developers are going to be none too happy with you bringing all those people there. It's unexpected, it's unpredictable, and it's often kind of a flash in the pan. So there's nothing really sustainable about that approach. So when I first started researching this, it did seem like that would be the most obvious solution to a lot of the problems, but I don't think that constitutes as something as sustainable growth strategy. What something I like to think about, and we'll use this kind of theoretical app idea. Let's say that I need to build a space travel reservation app, right? This new space B&B, if you will, needs to attract potential astronauts that are into the space travel. Elon Musk finally broke the code and he figured it all out, and now we've got to make some reservations. There's some dope apartments out there in Mars. We're going to go travel to those and figure them out. So the first thing I would do as a product developer is actually figure out the types of people that would be into that. So I interview a bunch of people that are really into space travel and they want to go check it out. And it seems that there's this strange correlation between those people and their love for robots. They all seem to just kind of, they really like those robots, and whether that be a correlation between that and space and technology, but I don't know what it is. It doesn't have a ton to do with my product. I might kind of just brush that off as something not very in tune with what I want to do as far as building a product, but like something interesting I keep in my back pocket. Now, I may go out with somebody, I might, get a lunch with somebody on the marketing team, and they mentioned to me, oops, that wasn't supposed to happen. They might mention to me that they're working on obviously their side of things, which is building kind of an audience that draws people into this potential space travel app. And they tell me a story about these ideas that they're having in their latest meetings, because not everybody's agreeing. And their favorite idea is actually producing a viral video of a monkey floating in a hip space B&B. And this is everybody's favorite idea. They're already interviewing monkey actor candidates. They're looking into like hip space apartments to try and create the right scene. They're all very excited. They're already working on it. It's going to be a hit. Now, there's more traditionalists in the marketing space and the marketing team that want just a simple, very forward email campaign. And you're already from, let's say that you've done the research with me. You've already interviewed a bunch of these people. They're not into checking their email already, so you kind of know that to be not a great idea. You're laughing at the viral video monkey idea. It's funny. And then he mentions there was some intern in the back of the room that mentioned like introducing our products with robots. Like maybe that's a way we should do this. And he has a good laugh, but you're kind of taken aback. You can't believe that you would have never thought maybe to introduce the product like that. But now that you think about it, and now that we know our users love robots, maybe this is a key factor in building kind of a rapport and almost a tribal kind of connection to your potential users. So you relay this back to your marketing friend. And it may not be, your typical metric, but it might be a first key step in trying to connect the dots between, product research and marketing tactics. So this is kind of the idea there of how they connect and where that bridge is not either team might be totally focused or zeroed in on it, but it is a key to viral growth and, not viral growth, more strategic and predictable growth by building those bridges that you find within research and metrics. Another way to look at this is trying to think about let's say we go back in the past. We have a time machine. We have space travel and time machines now. We go back in time, and we're going to build Facebook before Zuckerberg even knows what hit him. And we do a really good job because we're such good product builders. And marketing seems to be doing their job, but for whatever reason, we're still in a bit of a competition blend because there's so many other social networks out there. We can't seem to break the mold. This annoying one called MySpace is still like taking the lead. If you couldn't go viral, because if you think to back in those days, there really was not really a platform to go viral per se. Maybe there was like emails spinning around, but not in the same definition that we'd have today. What's something that you can do to help Facebook, your baby, grow? So this is actually a true story. This is something that Facebook did. They went back and tried to track and see the significance and correlations between what their users, that the users that were growing and building and sticking around, what they had in common across their metrics. And what they came to realize is that there is a lot between the social connections and how many they have. And it turned out after a certain number of connections, the dwell time increased, so they spent more time on the platform, and their bounce rate decreases. So as a product person, you might want to know, all right, well, if that's a trend, that's very interesting, but could you give me a metric of which I can base some of my product processes on so it gives me direction? And what that could look like, sorry, I can only read one thing at a time, is you want to connect with 7 friends, and then people will absolutely love the product. So that's a really good indicator for us as product people, because we can start building features that kind of zero in and direct people towards building those friends without actually having to miss that mark. So in a world where we wouldn't know that, right? We might build the best social network of anybody, and it might look beautiful. And it might follow all these standards, and it might literally be the best social network. But without knowing that, oh, we need to be directing them to create those friends and those connections, it's just gonna maybe get more users, but not really take on that growth cycle. Now that we know this is a growth metric, we can focus in on that, and we know the rewards will be plentiful. Just taking a step back, and if we kind of look at what this means, because I don't know about you, but once I figured that out, the growth metric thing is very powerful, because if you kind of create this cycle between your marketing and your product team, and some companies, I know it's very common, at least in this Hey Summit, is they're building these growth metric teams. And that is extremely powerful, because there is a kind of a synthesis that can happen between the marketing team and the product teams, because they can start leveraging each other's metrics and finding these overlapping growth metrics. And then not only will marketing continually bring people in, but product can guarantee that once they do get brought in, they will expound and retain and grow. And then in turn, marketing can come back with more metrics, and product can come back with more features that reflect those metrics. And you just have this really nice cycle and synthesis between those two teams that could generate a lot of growth just by default. Again, by focusing on those growth metrics as soon as you could find out what they are. So conceptually, that's what growth metrics and growth teams kind of focus in on, and that overlap is pretty critical, and I'm sure it's a common theme across a lot of these talks today. So I didn't want to focus too much on those, but what I wanted to kind of focus on is this magic here and the potential there. So this really cool cycle I'm going to talk about next. If you do have any questions on this concept itself and you want to know more about it, again, website's right here. This is probably a time where I take questions, but since this is a recording, not entirely sure how I do that. So again, questions could go to my website. But we're going to move on, and we're going to talk about this thing called and this is actually by Product-Led, which I believe there's somebody here representing that today. But they did something, or this method that they have is called a product-led growth flywheel. And I think Amazon, this might have been from Amazon originally. I know Amazon is known for their flywheel, but it's a strategy that kind of compounds that initial idea and concept of growth metrics, and it kind of it builds up on itself, and to the point where you really have an entire ecosystem that grows very organically. And we're going to talk about that, because I think there's so much power in that. So this is what a what a flywheel actually looks like. I know there's a lot of flashing things going on your screen right now, but essentially, there is kind of a cycle. You could kind of see this happening. There's steps on the inside, and the actions that they take on the outside. If we break it down a little bit more, focusing on that inner circle first, you've got your evaluators, and then your beginners, your regulars, and your champions. And this is really kind of a progression of what you ideally want your users to kind of grow and adapt into. And obviously these champions would champion your product and find more evaluators to start that product process all over again. And then you could kind of see that power there, where if you can try to take and walk through all your users through this natural cycle, they're just going to keep on building and expounding upon themselves very organically. What's critical here, though, and what I think a lot of products get wrong, is maybe they understand that, even from a subconscious standpoint, that they'd want their users to go through something like this. But I think even more critical is this outer circle, and that's the steps it takes to build each of these into their next phase. So we're going to zero in on that specifically. So you've got your evaluator first, the person who's trying to decide about your product and they're not really sure if they want to actually kick down the door and check it out and build a profile, into the people who actually build a profile and are kind of looking around. This step in between is going to be called activation. It's something that Products Led has mentioned in their site before, and it's really that moment of relief and excitement when you really connect with a product because it's a solution to one of your problems. When I think about new methodologies from whoever it is, because we're always growing and learning, I don't just like to read. I want to actually like feel what they're talking about, and it's very interesting because my most recent moment of relief and excitement with a product has been Flinto. I'm not sure if anybody out there knows what Flinto is, but it's this beautiful animation product that takes files. I think it's from Filma to and Sketch. I know it works with Sketch. You take it in there, and it's an animation tool. I haven't tried it yet, but I've tried all the other animation tools. Have not been very excited about them. But Flinto seems to scratch a lot of my itches and all of the problems that I've had in prior applications. So I'm actually at my activation step with Flinto right now because I was evaluating it. I might still be more on the evaluation side, to be honest. And I'll build once I log in, I'll be a beginner. But that's really helpful to start thinking through what that is for your own product. Is what do you want them to feel? What solution is it that you're trying to solve? And how do you get them to focus on that in order to become your beginner? And obviously, once you know what that is, try to figure out the actual metric, that actual number, that 7 users or 7 connections on Facebook, and what that would be for your activation metric. Once you figure that out and you've got a whole slew of beginners, but they don't seem to be coming back, you want to try to formulate an adopt metric. And that is actually what Facebook's 7 connections metric is. It would fall into this step. I assume, I've never worked at Facebook, but if I did, I would assume that metric falls into this bucket. And adoption is forming habits around getting users to associate your product to a specific task or solution. So I know that if I have an announcement to make, I go on Facebook and I'm going to announce to the world that I'm getting new shoes tomorrow, whatever it is. And it's a habit for me. I know that if I have to tell the world something, I'm not going to jump on Gmail and try and find everybody's email address and do that, right? My tool for doing that, my association to that specific solution is Facebook. And that's why I think it's really critical to try and form habits or try and distinguish where habit forming tasks could be within your product in order to figure where that is, because once you do, you could start figuring out what those adoption metrics are and how to create those adoption type behaviorals around your product. And obviously, again, forming metrics and key numbers around that to get you to that point. Once you're a regular, you want your guys to become champions. This is kind of a fun step for me because I think this starts playing into more of those fluffier kind of traits and features in your product. I use Asana a lot, and there's a unicorn that flies across my screen if I get enough things done. I don't need a unicorn to get things done, but I kind of love when that happens. It's kind of stupid, but you're kind of trying to build and adore, or like even almost like Easter eggs kind of do the same thing. You're kind of building this tribal aspect to your product. If you think about more product strategies, there's something called the Kano method, and there's a matrix that kind of puts a whole quadrant of surprise and delight level features where I don't necessarily need them. I already have what I need, but anything in addition makes me excited and happy. And those are really fun to kind of explore because you really are starting to kind of build, again, like that tribal or family aspect where, only the cool kids on the inside get it. And that's what you're kind of starting to create when you want a champion of your product. So looking for those is very critical. They're not just using their product. Now they're looking forward to enjoying using your product. So once you get them to that step, there's one more step. This is the champion back to the evaluator, by the champion actually advocating your product to those evaluators. We know as marketing people, for all of you marketing people out there, that word of mouth is probably the oldest but the most powerful way to get your product out there, and this is where that comes in. And from a product standpoint, we like our NPS scores because that means there's a lot of champions out there promoting or presumably promoting our product to those evaluators. So ideally, you want them to do this without prompts. That users are inviting others to your product and they're leaving reviews, they're actively evangelizing. You want like some really, you want a lot of verbs going on, right? You want them to be speaking, talking, using, evangelizing, posting, sharing. You want them to do all of those verbs, right? The good news about this step is it's really easy to kind of nudge your champions that already love you to advocate for you. So it's kind of a fun step that doesn't usually require much on the product end. From a metric standpoint, you might want to see how many people are actually doing this to try and see if you're going up or down, or like maybe even connecting it back to specific features to figure out exactly what step that's occurring in. That might be helpful. But at the end of the day, what's really nice about this is once you get them to the champion standpoint, really it takes you the amount of time it is to build that share button in to get them to become those advocates. So it really just depends on those first two steps to really drive the rest of it, and it kind of just builds upon itself to become easier and easier as you go. Again, if you have any questions, my website's there for you. All in all, though, the more I thought about this, from the product standpoint, we do a lot of metrics to make sure the product is something our users want. From a marketing funnel standpoint, the old school ways do have a lot of merit. I don't know a lot about them, so there wasn't a lot of that in this talk, but I did want to make sure you understood that this new product-led flywheel is something that you can build upon itself. You can start really leveraging some of one wheel against another wheel. There's even, like the way I described it in my talk is very linear, but there's obviously different ways that you can dive into all of those and kind of build more lateral correlations there and really drive this whole like monster of a flywheel that your product could then become as big as Amazon. I mean, it's really interesting once you start grasping the concept, how you can build them upon themselves and kind of grow your product more and more organically. And then it really leverages your awesome marketing team and your product team together into those very specific growth metrics. That's it for me, guys. Again, my name is Jean Kaluza. I've been in the product space for going on 10 years more. I don't know math, but you can use this code if kids are still doing that. I don't even know, but that should take you directly to my site. If you have any questions or you just want to do a shout out, I'm there for you. I hope this is helpful for you, and again, reach out. I hope to hear from you. Thanks, guys.